What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing a complete hero guide for one of the better characters in Star Wars Battlefront 2, Luke Skywalker. In these hero guides, we're going to be covering everything that could possibly need covering, from the base stats, ability stats, the best star cards for Galactic Assault and Supremacy, as well as some of the best maps to choose them on, some general tips for these game modes, the best star cards for Heroes vs Villains and HvV Showdown, which enemy characters you need to look out for, and then lastly covering some general tips for the hero game modes as well. So as you can see, this guide is going to be breaking down every single aspect of the hero. If you're new around here and you do end up enjoying this video, then be sure to subscribe to the channel for more Battlefront 2 content, and be sure to hit that notification bell as well so that you are notified each time I upload more videos like this going forward. But anyway, with that out of the way, let's get stuck right into it. So starting off with Luke's base stats, and he does have a pretty solid set of stats, although honestly for how good he actually is, they're probably not as good as you would expect. Starting off with his base HP, he has 750, which is pretty much the average amount of any saber users in the game, and as for how much health he can regenerate at once, his regen is 200, which is actually below average for a saber user, although still what you would consider to be average when you consider every single hero in the game. In terms of his saber damage, he deals 130 damage from the front and 160 damage from behind, so as is the case with pretty much every saber hero, he can one-hit kill any troopers from behind other than a heavy. He has a swing speed of roughly 2.1 swings per second, which is one of the fastest swing speeds in the entire game, and this is a big part of why he can be so dominant. He's able to swing 10 times before running out of stamina, and he's able to block only 10 lightsaber attacks before running out of stamina as well, which is once again just slightly below or on par with most saber heroes, but overall his base stats are pretty decent across the board. Now moving on to his abilities, and in my opinion he does have one of the best sets of abilities in the entire game, especially when it comes to some really nice combos. His left ability is called Push, and exactly as the name suggests, this just causes Luke to push enemies with the Force, dealing damage and knocking them to the ground. It has a 20-second cooldown time after you've used it, which is pretty much what you'd expect. It's on the longer side, but it's definitely not too long considering how good the ability can be. It deals only 90 damage when used on an enemy hero, however it will deal 150 damage when it's used against troopers and reinforcements, so it's definitely much better suited for the trooper modes in terms of the damage output. This ability is great for being pretty much a get out of jail free card sometimes, but it can also be used in a very aggressive way at the same time. Moving on, we have his middle ability, which is called Repulse, and this ability is another pretty decent ability. When activated, Luke will send a burst of force energy into the ground, dealing damage and knocking enemies off their feet, dealing 120 damage per hit, which is not quite enough for a one-hit kill, but paired with some other abilities it can be a very solid combo, but I will touch on that once we get into the general tips. Just like the push ability, it does also have a 20-second cooldown, which again is pretty much what you'd expect. It's not fast, but it's not slow either. Now for his right ability, we have Rush, and this one essentially causes you to move forward a little bit faster than normal, swinging your saber as you move and damaging anyone along the way. It deals 100 damage per hit, but it also has 2 uses available, so that can cause for some very nice combinations and quick attacks through this ability. Each use takes 5 seconds to cool down, so obviously if you use both then it will take 10 seconds to recharge up to 2 uses again, but you don't have to wait until the second one is recharged to be able to use the first one. So that is it for all of his base stats and abilities, and now we're going to move on to some tips for Galactic Assault and Supremacy, starting off with his best star cards. Keep in mind these cards are just a matter of opinion. There aren't any loadouts in the game that are objectively the best or anything like that, but these are just what I find to work best in these modes. The first card I'd recommend is his Intensify card, and this one makes it so that with each kill or 200 damage dealt to enemy villains, you'll gain 2 extra damage on your lightsaber attacks. Now, as an example, if you get say a 10 kill streak, then that will add 20 damage to your saber attacks, meaning you now deal 150 from the front and 180 from behind, and so obviously that will greatly increase your damage output, especially against troopers. The second card I'd recommend is the Extended Push Reach card, and this one just increases the area of effect of his push ability by up to 30% further. This ability is a one-hit kill against troopers, and so obviously the further away you can use it from, the better you're going to be able to do with it. The third card I'd recommend is the Jedi Reflexes card, and this one actually gives you a third rush attack at the cost of a slightly slower cooldown. Fully maxed, the cooldown is only 10% longer, which equates to pretty much half a second, and so this one is definitely great for adding that third rush and allowing you to deal a ton of damage while also staying on the move. Personally, I think these are definitely the best 3 cards for these modes. However, if you do disagree, then definitely let us all know down in the comments whatever you prefer to use, because there is no right or wrong when it comes to star cards, so feel free to leave your own recommendations down below. Now moving on to the best maps to choose him on in Galactic Assault, the 3 maps that I personally think he's best on are Kashyyyk, Endor and Naboo. Those are just the three that I've seemed to do the best with him on over the last 3 years. However, maps like the Death Star, Tatooine and Yavin 4 are also pretty solid choices. Honestly, he can do well on almost any map, but for me, these are the three that I would choose to be some of his best. Now, moving on to some general tips for Galactic Assault and Supremacy, Luke is really well suited to a fast-paced playstyle, not only due to his fast sprint speed, but also due to the fact that his abilities are all great for that kind of hit and run playstyle. Now, before I touch on that a bit more, I do have to just mention that just because he suits that playstyle, it doesn't mean you have to be over the top aggressive with him at all times, because you do need to remember that he only has 200 health regen, so once you do take a bit of damage, you can often be in a bit of trouble. To avoid that happening, the best way to play it is really just to try and combine those abilities whenever you need them. For example, in close quarters areas where there are a heap of enemies piled up, but in a 1v1 situation, they can be great to use as well. Not only with Luke, but with pretty much every character, I used to play in a way where I'd actually try and keep their abilities for those kind of do or die moments when I really needed them, and in certain areas that is still a great idea, but with Luke you really can use those abilities a lot more throughout the game. Whether it's a 1v1 or a 1v5, his abilities are useful in pretty much all situations. One great combo that is absolutely amazing in close quarters is using his rush attack to get quickly into the area and then damage anyone along the way, and then immediately using the repulse ability to pretty much finish off anyone that you hit along the way. This combo deals a total of 220 damage to anyone that gets hit by both abilities, so obviously if you walk into a hallway and you see like 5 or 6 enemies right there in front of you, you can often take every single one of them out even if they are a heavy, which is a very handy thing to be able to do on a regular basis. It might be seen as a little bit spammy, and to be honest it is, but with that lower health regen compared to the likes of say Obi-Wan, you really just do need to make sure you get those kinds of kills without taking a heap of damage, which is where all of those abilities come into play. Now in saying that, I don't mean just spamming all 3 abilities, getting the kill and then running away until they cool down. That's definitely not how I'd recommend playing him, but as Obi-Wan would say, the best defense is a swift and decisive offense, and with that lower health, that is definitely one of the better ways to go about it. He is still pretty decent on defense, don't get me wrong, but at least for me, I just try to take the game on a bit and keep getting those constant kills to just replenish my health while also avoiding damage, rather than trying to rely too heavily on my defense. Luke isn't by any means reliant on his abilities. Once you get an 18 kill streak, he does max that damage out at 166 over 196, so his saber is actually the most deadly in the game, but he definitely tends to survive a little bit better when you're combining all of those abilities together and taking the game on rather than being super passive. To summarise, you want to make sure to play a somewhat aggressive playstyle with Luke, but not an overly aggressive playstyle to where you're making dumb decisions, and if you do combine his abilities together, then he can be very hard to read and therefore very hard to counter. So now moving on to the hero versus villain game modes, and just like in the trooper modes, Luke is probably one of the best heroes in the game, and I'd say he's pretty much universally seen as the best light side hero. Starting off with his star cards, and the first two are actually the same as his Galactic Assault and Supremacy cards that I mentioned earlier. Intensify is just a no-brainer, more damage is perfect for these modes, and then the Jedi Reflexes card is also ideal just because it allows you to be a lot more agile while also being able to close ground on blaster users a whole lot easier. As for the third card, however, I actually run the Stronger Push card most of the time with Luke, which is often a card that a lot of people will tell you not to use in these modes. This one makes you push enemies up to twice as far as normal, and a lot of people will make the argument that that's a bad thing as you're sort of pushing them out of range of your own attacks, actually saving them from taking damage from you. The thing is, his regular push actually does the same. Without any cards, you'll generally still push them too far away to where they can just stand back up and block by the time you get to them, and so to me, that's already not the way to use his push. Personally, I actually use his push mostly as a defense mechanism since it only deals 90 damage against villains. For example, maybe I'm really low on health and stamina and just need to get away to regenerate, at which point I essentially just push the player to the other side of the map, giving me time to breathe, let my health and stamina regen, and then I can get back into the fight. The other positive is that on maps with no edges, you can push enemies off so much easier, and as annoying as this can be, it is a very effective way to play the game, whether you like it or not. Now, if you don't like the Stronger Push card, then a good alternative is the Epicenter card, which is actually bugged and can deal damage through blocks. Now, a lot of people do tend to act like this is the best card ever, but it only deals 40 damage through the blocks, so it's not like you're dealing a ton of damage. But with that being said, every time you get an enemy saber user down to 40 or less health and they're block spamming, you can instantly kill them, so it is still a very decent card to choose. Now, moving on to some enemies that you might want to keep an eye out for in these modes, and the 3 most dangerous characters in my opinion are Vader, Palpatine and Count Dooku. Vader needs absolutely no explanation, he's super OP and is a threat to anyone. Palpatine can drain Luke's stamina super fast since his blocking stamina isn't great. And then Dooku is the only character who can actually have a faster swing speed than Luke, so all three of these guys can be dangerous if you're not careful. Now finally moving on to just some regular tips for these hero game modes, and honestly his playstyle in these modes pretty much mirrors that of the large scale game modes. Be aggressive and make the most of those abilities. Luke has such a big advantage in these game modes due to that crazy swing speed, and like I said, the only other person who can challenge it is obviously Dooku with that duelist ability active, but other than that, Luke has by far the fastest damage output in the entire game. Now that doesn't mean swing spamming your enemies, because anyone with a brain will just melt you if you keep on swing spamming. However, if they are out of stamina, then swing spam like mad, because there's a 0% chance they're going to survive that. Luke's push and repulse obviously both knock down your enemies, and so if you do it close enough to a wall or a barrier or something like that, you can stay close enough that you can pretty much follow up with 2 swings before they can block, dealing upwards of 300 to 400 damage in pretty much one single attack. The same goes for if you get behind an enemy, that swing speed can usually allow you to land 2 quick hits before they can react, and then if you can lure them into dropping their guard and attacking you, you can dodge, use the push, and once again chain those abilities together to deal a whole heap of damage all at once. When it comes to facing off against blaster heroes, like I mentioned in the GA and Supremacy tips, ability combos are definitely the best way to get some quick damage done, and usually if you can use all 3 abilities alongside a few quick saber attacks, you can actually take out pretty much any blaster hero before they're even going to have time to truly react. To summarize, once again, you should be playing aggressively and making the most of those abilities, and especially combining them with each other to be even more unstoppable. However, you should also be wary of swing spamming, as it can get you killed, but if an enemy is on the ropes, then swing spamming can be a great way to kill them while they can't retaliate. So that is going to do it for this Luke Skywalker hero guide, guys. I am very keen to keep on pumping these out over the coming months, and hopefully if I can master each character myself, then I will get a guide out on every single character in the game. If you enjoyed the video and it did help you out, then be sure to leave a like down below to support the channel, and be sure to subscribe with those notifications on so you don't miss out on any more Star Wars Battlefront 2 content. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Crush them! Make them suffer!